If I have some executive function deficits, I'm not going to totally understand her sarcasm. I'm not going to be able to be a good reader of her facial cues, her body language, her tone of voice, her volume of voice, and so on. So if I have an abstract thinking deficit, I'm not going to understand language unless it's very literal and concrete. With abstract thinking deficit, I'm going to take things very literally. I'm not going to, if she is even remotely vague in describing what she wants, it's going to be hard for me to understand. If I have an emotional control deficit, which is another, emotional control is an executive function, but if I have a deficit in that area, I'm going to have difficulty controlling my escalating emotions. We call that emotional dysregulation. So if I tend to revert to some form of a shutdown or a meltdown, that is an emotional control deficit. Planning and organizing is an executive function. If we have a deficit in that area, then I have difficulty organizing my time, organizing information, carrying out instructions. How does that cause a problem in the relationship? The ASD individual is usually a visual learner in a verbal world. So if she is giving me verbal instructions, I'm really going to have a hard time understanding and carrying out those instructions accurately. Shifting focus, if I have a deficit in that area, it's going to be hard for me to stop what I'm doing, especially if it's one of my special interests and I'm highly focused on it in the moment, to drop that and shift completely to attend to something that she wants me to tend to. Even if she just interrupts what I'm doing and wants to engage in a conversation all of a sudden, especially if, I need to talk to you about this problem. It's like, okay, well, thanks for the big surprise and disrupting my routine type of thing. And then the other deficit that is very prominent in ASD is working memory. So if I have a working memory deficit, it's hard for me to remember what she said, especially if it was too many points that droned on for 15 or 20 minutes. So how this is going to cause a problem in the relationship is when she is upset with me, but she doesn't come right out and tell me, she expects me to know it anyway. But if I don't get it, if I don't understand that she's upset because she's not being direct and concrete with me and being very specific, then somehow I'm insensitive, uncaring because I'm not noticing that she's upset. I want to make sure you understand the difference between a meltdown and a shutdown. With a true meltdown, your prefrontal cortex is shutting down and your amygdala, the fight or flight response of the brain, is now on front stage. And it's flooding you with adrenaline and cortisol, fight or flight chemicals. And with a true meltdown, let's assume it's in the context of her trying to talk to you, especially about a heavyweight topic while she's angry, you are only going to be able to. You won't be able to will yourself into a different state of mind. You will only be able to listen to maybe 8% of what she's saying and only understand 60% of that and only retain 40% of that and maybe only follow through with 20% of what she's asking. So in a full-blown meltdown moment, she is wasting her time and energy with you. That's why we need to have the conversation about prevention. Because intervening in the middle of a meltdown, that bullet's already left the gun. That storm is going to have to ride itself out. So when we're talking about meltdowns, we have to think in terms of prevention. What is a shutdown? That is simply his catching it early that he's escalating towards a meltdown, and he leaves to prevent a meltdown. So I got an email from a husband with ASD level 1, and he was saying that I talk about how social skills can be taught. And so his question is, well, exactly how does one go about learning social skills? Well, you're going to need some outside assistance, a seeing eye dog, so to speak, and that could be a social skills coach, could be a life coach, job coach, an accountability partner, and in some cases, if your NT wife is willing to do so, she could be a compassionate coach from time to time. So let's pick a social skill to use as an example. Let's say, for example, you're not really great at give and take in conversation, and you interrupt your NT wife as she is talking. You have a thought, and you just dive in and step on her tongue and throw your thought in the mix, or maybe offer advice that's not necessarily wanted or needed. And so she gets the impression that you're more interested in talking about your viewpoint than listening to her viewpoint. So this is one of these hidden social rules where you don't interrupt the speaker. You kind of wait until the other person pauses, and then you interject. The first phase of learning a social skill would be unconscious incompetence. And so, to use the example of give and take in conversation, you interject or interrupt, and you're not aware that you're doing it. You don't know what you don't know. And so you violate this hidden social rule repeatedly, and you're unaware. Now let's say that the two of you have agreed that she's going to cue you in a very tactful manner to let you know when you interrupt, and you're okay with that. You're not going to download that as criticism. So she's talking, you do what you usually do and interrupt, and then she goes, remember when we said I was going to point out to you when you interrupt? He says, yeah. Okay, well, there was an interruption right there. And so now she is cueing you to the interruptions. And now this is the second phase of learning a social skill, which is conscious incompetence. What I mean by that, you still haven't cultivated that social skill yet, but now you're becoming aware of it by virtue of her cueing. Okay? So now the next phase would be conscious competence. And this is where you're beginning to develop the habit of not interrupting. She speaks. You're fully aware that your tendency is to interrupt, but you're not interrupting. You're waiting for the pause, and then you come in and put your 2 cents in, or provide her with some feedback on what she just said. So you're consciously aware that you are no longer violating this hidden social rule of don't interrupt the speaker. Then the fourth and final phase of learning a social skill is called unconscious competence. In this fourth and final phase, you have fully developed the new habit of give and take in conversation. You take some conversation from her, then you give some conversation back. You take some from her, you give some back. It's a ping pong effect now, rather than you dominating the conversation or interrupting the flow. And you're not even aware that you are doing it right. It's become an unconscious habit now. It's running on autopilot. And so that is the fourth and final phase, which is unconscious competence. So we go from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence to conscious competence to unconscious competence. And we got there because you had, in this example, you got a cue from your NT wife that you were interrupting. You made a behavior change, and the reward is now you have developed a new social skill. And those are 3 important factors there we're going to talk about now. Cue, behavior change, and reward. Except we'll use a different example here. I'm going to borrow one from one of my clients. He was accused of being a workaholic, and he admits that he was. And so he would work late at the office, and he would get home after the family had already eaten dinner. And so his wife was complaining that he wasn't spending enough time in the evenings with the family. And so what he did was he set up his own cue. In this case, he put a timer on the lights in his office, and at 5 o'clock, the lights shut off. And he took 3 to 5 minutes to tie up any loose ends and wrap it up, and he left. So the lights shutting off right at 5 o'clock was the cue. The behavior change was he packed up and left and went home and spent time with his family and actually ate dinner with his family. And so that was the behavior change. And then the reward was happy wife, happy life. In other words, she felt better about the relationship because she didn't feel like work was more important to him than she was. And the reward was less tension in the marriage. And it was a big reward according to him. So that was a long way around the bush to illustrate one way to learn social skills. But bear in mind, you will need some outside assistance. This is not something that you can necessarily do on your own. I'm sure it's happened before where guys have done it on their own, but that's taking the very, very long road. So best to recruit the assistance from somebody else who would be very eager to help. One final note, guys, the important point here is consistency. Practice, 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 because you want to develop a new habit that runs on autopilot. And the only way you're going to get there is chronic, emphasis on chronic practicing. Now, practice may not necessarily mean perfect.
That's okay. We're not shooting for perfection. But practice will definitely make permanent. In other words, you may still interrupt the speaker from time to time. That's okay. But if you're not doing that 80% of the time now, rather than only 10%, and you're consistently doing that over time, that's permanent. So we're not shooting for perfection, but practice does make permanent.
Her resentment is not your problem. You can't make her mad, sad, glad. You can't make her spit. You can't make her stand on her head. You can't make her forgive you. You can't make her let go of resentment. She chose, I hope she's listening, she chose resentment. You didn't make her feel resentment. She chose it. Her resentment is her responsibility. That goes into the filing cabinet called I don't have any control over that. You have control of your behavior, and you're here. You're making a good faith effort to shift gears from this point forward. You have control of that. But her resentment, she has a laundry list of problems that she has with you, and she's ruminated over all these problems, and she's probably accused you of being a narcissist and so on. She has fed her own resentment. And if she holds on to bitterness and resentment, that doesn't hurt you. She might be in the other room thinking how pissed off she is about you. You don't even know what she's thinking. Her resentment only hurts her. It's her feeling, not yours. You can't make her stop being resentful. Now, if you follow the suggestions that we're learning in this group, there might be a happy organic consequence that her resentment level loosens up a little bit. But you're not doing this to reduce her resentment. You're doing this for you. You're doing this to reduce your relationship anxiety so that you can be a better team player in this marriage. This is all about you advocating for you, you doing strategies for you. And yes, there will probably be, and hopefully will be, some secondary benefit for her, of course. But that resentment thing, that's her problem. You can't make her feel any particular way. If you are operating like you usually operate in the heat of the moment, you are already by default operating under the old brain. So I have used the term many times. We'll use meltdowns as the example. You can't think in terms of intervention with a meltdown, which, by the way, is the amygdala on steroids. We have to think in terms of prevention. Now, I understand that sometimes things have to be dealt with right now, and in those cases, you're just simply going to have to tough it out as best you can. The other 98% of the time, when you are feeling heat, we said heat of the moment. It's no longer just a moment. There's now heat. When you're feeling heat in the moment, you are under the old brain by default. And it would be best to think in terms of prevention, because there's no way for me to intervene in this moment. If I'm experiencing the heat of the moment, I'm not going to be able to instantly move myself from old brain to new brain. Not going to happen. So I have to think in terms of prevention, which is, let's use an example with the wife. I'm going to have this conversation. She's upset about something. She sent me a text. We're going to have the discussion tonight. I know for a fact that I'm going to probably go into this operating mostly under the old brain, and I'm going to have to let her know when that happens. And I'm going to say, I do want to discuss this, but right now I can already tell that I'm not in a mental state to discuss this in a way that's going to yield any kind of problem solving. Mental state being I'm not in my prefrontal cortex right now. This is a stretch, and some mentees aren't up for this. Can we treat this a little bit like a business meeting where perhaps you write down some of your thoughts and let me look at those And then I will write down some of my responses to those. And this does make longer work, but it also gets you removed from the old brain, because now she is talking to you on a piece of paper instead of face to face, where her words are hitting you in the forehead like darts, and she's staring at you, and that look is going right through your eyes and drilling 2 holes in the back of your head. So this is a longer route to problem solve, but with the other way, you don't problem solve. We're removing the heat. We're even removing the moment. This is important to you, therefore it's important to me. I want to get the full message. Could you please write down the main points and let me, when you're done, give it to me. I will go over here and look at it and ruminate through them and come back with a response. Give me some time to ruminate over this. And while you're over there dealing with that, now your prefrontal cortex is in charge. And I understand some things are emergent. Wouldn't be able to do this some of the time, but the times that you would not be able to do this would be just 2-3% of the time. Some things are emergent, and she's not going to write it out. And some ENT wives say, I'm not writing anything out. You stand there and take it like a man, in which case I would say, leave. Unless you're a masochist and want to just sit there and take it to prove something to yourself. You're not going to get anything accomplished. Why punish yourself? That's not self-soothing. We just discussed in this session today. We're looking for self-soothing. We're shooting for the parasympathetic mode. If she said, no, I want you to sit there and sweat. I don't think so. I don't think so. See you later. Bye. Write it out. Your main points. We will talk. If you expect me to sit here and try to problem solve when my amygdala has flooded me with cortisol and adrenaline, no. Instead of punishing myself by this conversation, I'm going to self-soothe myself by removing myself from this conversation. And there is something to be said that sometimes she just has to have an emotional vomit to feel better. But I got a real problem with that, because that's like me asking you, okay, sometimes she's going to be verbally abusive, and you just kind of, just go ahead and be tied to the whipping post for a little while, because she'll feel better. Fuck that. We're interested in being able to stay in parasympathetic mode so that our new brain is working, so that we are rational and logical, so that we can problem solve, which will benefit her. We care about solving the relationship problems, but it ain't going to happen unless we do it this way. So if she's more concerned with just having an emotional vomit in your lap than problem solving, you have a choice. Okay, I think she probably needs to vent. I'm going to be over here in a heightened state of anxiety, and I have no clue what to do about it, but I'll just go ahead and let her spit all over me. Or I'm going to start treating myself better. I will problem solve when you calm down, and we may have to make a few accommodations, but my big goal is to solve the problem instead of letting the problem linger and linger and linger, and your resentment getting deeper and deeper and deeper, which is what we've been doing for the previous 10, 15 years. Now she has a choice. She can choose to be a bully and get nothing accomplished other than you doing a shutdown or a meltdown. Or she can go, okay, well, I'm up for trying anything to solve some of the problems, because they're piling up over there in the closet and we're running out of closet space.
Hey, this is Mark Hutten. Would you like to schedule a one-on-one Zoom call? Okay, it's so simple. Just look under any of my videos in the description area. Click on this Calendly link Now you see my calendar. Pick your month, your day, anytime that's available. Enter your name and email address. Then you'll get a follow-up email with the Zoom link on the day and time that you picked. And voila, we will talk.